My name is Esme, 31 years old. By now, I should have been basking in the happiness before my wedding. But at the rehearsal dinner with more than 100 guests, my future mother-in-law suddenly stood up, slammed a thick stack of papers on the table and said loudly, "If you truly love my son, sign this right here in front of everyone." The room fell silent, then filled with whispers while disdainful eyes turned toward me. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a rehearsal dinner. It was a staged performance meant to humiliate me. If you've ever been in a situation where you were belittled, where others tried to decide your worth, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe to join me. And right now, let me tell you the full story behind that shocking moment. If there's one thing that defines my childhood, it's the smell of old paper in the small bookstore on a Philadelphia corner, where my mother struggled every day to keep the shop running while raising me. My father died when I was only 10. The house became suffocatingly empty, and the already quiet bookstore struggled even more. I still remember the winter nights when my mother bent over the ledger under a yellow lamp, sometimes lifting her head to smile at me. "Esme, you need to study hard. I'll take care of the rest." Those words carried me through the years of scarcity. I knew she couldn't take care of everything, but her strength made me believe that no matter how hard it was, the two of us would survive. I threw myself into studying as if it was the only way out of the cycle of lack. Sleepless nights at my desk, mornings spent working part-time at a cafe while clutching my study notes. All of it wove together my youth. Then came the miracle, a full scholarship to MIT. I still remember the day I got the acceptance letter. My mother froze for a moment, then wrapped me in her arms, laughing and crying. "My daughter, if your father were alive, he would be so proud." Those 4 years at MIT were not a dreamland. I had to work twice as hard to keep up with students from wealthy families, where studying was just one of many privileges. But that harsh environment shaped me into an urban design specialist, driven by the belief that cities shouldn't be only for the rich, but must have space for everyone. Life didn't stop at the classroom. I met Lena, an environmental engineer who shared my vision. We spent countless nights discussing how to restore green spaces in cities, turning abandoned lots and old buildings into parks, community libraries, or vertical gardens. From that vision, we and a few friends founded a startup. At first, nobody believed we could survive. But then, a small park renovation project in suburban Boston caught the media's attention. Pictures of children playing under trees we had designed made it onto the cover of an architecture magazine. Step by step, the company grew, eventually winning a national award for sustainable urban design. Still, I didn't choose the glamorous path. I returned to New York, took a teaching job at a university, lived in a modest Brooklyn apartment, and drove an old car bought from a colleague. My clothes were simple, neat enough for lectures but never luxurious. To most, I was a professor with a steady paycheck, sometimes invited to speak at conferences. Even close colleagues didn't know I held a large share in that startup, that I was one of its hidden architects. I enjoyed living quietly. I wanted to be judged by real effort, not the balance in my account or a flashy CEO title. One day, sitting together in our aging bookstore, my mother asked, "Esme, why don't you let people know how successful you are? You deserve recognition." I smiled softly. "Mom, my true worth isn't about how much others know, but about what I use my success for." Her eyes glowing with pride, she rarely spoke aloud. I chose to stay hidden, to love, to live, and to see who had the patience to see me without the glitter of wealth. I thought Daniel was that person. He loved me when he saw me on stage at a conference, passionately speaking about turning abandoned rooftops into community gardens. He said my eyes glowed like lights in the dark. And I believed him. What I didn't know was that this simplicity and quietness would be the very reason his family despised me, seeing me as someone clinging to the Collins fortune. And so, from Philadelphia's hardships to MIT's pressure, from a small startup to national recognition, everything I once kept hidden would one day have to be laid on the table, faced directly as an undeniable truth. I still remember that afternoon. A charity conference on designing spaces for underprivileged children held in New Haven. I came to present a community playground project, while Daniel attended as a lawyer representing a sponsoring organization. Unlike the men in glossy suits swirling wine glasses as if they owned the room, Daniel sat quietly in the middle rows, listening intently to every speaker. When I stepped onto the stage, his eyes never left me, not in judgment, but with genuine focus, as if he truly wanted to understand what I was saying. After my presentation, while I was gathering my papers, he approached and held out his hand. "I'm Daniel Collins. Your talk was impressive." I froze for a second. Collins, a name everyone in New England knew. Yet instead of the cold arrogance of old money, he was approachable. "Thank you," I replied. "I'm Esme." He smiled. "I grew up in Connecticut but honestly never thought much about how children living right next to our wealthy neighborhoods lacked safe playgrounds. Today you made me reconsider." We started talking about work, then personal things. I was surprised to learn he loved hiking and had once climbed the White Mountains alone. I laughed when he admitted he was addicted to tacos twice as spicy as normal. He was intrigued when I spoke of my mother, the woman who spent her life in a tiny bookstore but gave me faith that knowledge could change destiny. That night, before leaving the hall, Daniel asked, "Esme, may I take you out for coffee? Not to talk about work, but to hear more about community gardens and the things that make your eyes light up." I couldn't help but smile. It had been so long since anyone asked me a question like that. Our first dates were simple: a small roadside cafe, a picnic in the park on a chilly spring morning. Daniel didn't take me to the lavish restaurants his social circle usually chose. Instead, he packed sandwiches himself with a cheap bottle of red wine that still tasted good. "I don't want you to think I'm trying to impress you with money," he said when I glanced at the basket. I laughed. "Then you're lucky. Because I hate being tested with things that don't belong to me." Over 2 years we became inseparable. Daniel was busy with cases big and small, but he always made time for me. I remember nights when he came to my small apartment after working late, carrying a box of hot pasta. "I knew you probably hadn't eaten dinner," he'd say, his eyes warm with care. Of course, we argued sometimes. I once lashed out when he looked exhausted from the weight of his parents' expectations, that he always had to behave like a Collins. Daniel would hesitate, then confess, "Esme, sometimes I feel like I'm living more for them than for myself." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Then live for yourself. And for us." The most unforgettable moment was on our second anniversary. He invited me onto a small rented boat on Candlewood Lake. The sunset cast fiery colors over the water. The breeze ruffled my hair. While I was still lost in the view, he suddenly knelt down, holding out a small box. Inside was an antique ring, the emerald glowing bright in the sunset. "This belonged to my grandmother, the woman the entire family revered. She once told me when I found someone who could make me feel at home in every moment, I should give it away. Esme, will you marry me?" I choked up. Growing up without a father, I had never imagined a man would kneel before me, promising a lifetime together. I nodded without hesitation. He pulled me into his arms. "Thank you for choosing me." In that moment, I believed all the hardships, all the scornful looks from his wealthy family would fade away. I believed love was strong enough to overcome every difference in background. And I was ready to begin a new chapter, a new family by the side of the man I loved. The first time Daniel brought me to the Collins estate, I had prepared myself. He had said his family had a long tradition in Connecticut, but I never expected the place to look like a living museum. The tall iron gates opened to a long gravel path leading to the main house, a Georgian-style mansion with white columns and a gray roof, overlooking an endless lawn. I drove my old silver sedan, the one I had kept for nearly 8 years. When I parked under the trees, I caught the eyes of the butler and a few gardeners. They were polite, but a flicker of surprise crossed their faces. My palms were drenched in sweat. I took a deep breath, telling myself, "Esme, you're here as the woman Daniel loves. That's all that matters." Veronica, Daniel's sister-in-law, was the first to come out. She wore a pearl-colored silk dress, her heels clicking against the gravel. Her eyes flicked quickly at my car, then over the simple navy dress I was wearing. A thin smile appeared on her lips. "Cute car. You must take really good care of it to keep it that long." I kept my voice steady. "Yes, it runs better than people think." Veronica tilted her head, eyes sharp. "You teach at a university, right? In New York? Professor's salary. You know, it's not much. Do you think it'll be enough to support Daniel if he ever wants to retire early?" The question sounded casual, but it was sharp enough to chill me. Before I could answer, Daniel stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. "Veronica, she takes care of herself. That's what matters." Veronica shrugged with a faint smile. I'm only concerned, that's all. We walked into the grand hall. Antique oil paintings hung on the walls. Persian rugs stretched to the dark wooden staircase. At the center stood Margaret, Daniel's mother, composed in a wine-colored dress, pearls gleaming around her neck. She approached, her smile polite but her eyes testing. Welcome, Esme. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Her voice was warm, but almost immediately the questions poured out, disguised as friendly conversation. What do your parents do for a living? In college you had a full scholarship, right? Was it difficult? Teaching must keep you busy. Do you plan to do something bigger in your career? I answered each question calmly, but I could feel the underlying message in every word. You come from an ordinary background. Are you truly worthy of my son? At dinner the distance became even clearer. Richard, Daniel's father, spoke mostly with his son about lawsuits and figures in the financial world I had never heard of. I sat quietly, feeling more like a stranger than a future bride. When dessert came, Margaret turned to me with a sweet voice. Esme, I'm sure you must be a wonderful cook. A smart woman like you must know how to balance everything at home. What's Daniel's favorite dish when you cook? I smiled and answered honestly, probably pasta. He once ate it 3 meals in a row without getting tired of it. The table laughed, but underneath that laughter I caught a bitter note, as if they thought it was more ridiculous than endearing. After dinner, Margaret led me through the rose garden. A light breeze carried the soft fragrance. She held my hand, her tone like a confidant. Esme, being a Collins daughter-in-law isn't only about loving Daniel. It's about carrying the responsibility of an entire family. Are you ready for that? I answered slowly. I don't see loving and committing to Daniel as a responsibility. To me it's a choice and I want to walk beside him. Her smile stiffened slightly, then she patted the back of my hand. I hope so. Our family is used to certain standards. But who knows, maybe you'll fit in. When back at the hotel I sat silently in the car, staring out the window. Daniel gently held my hand. Don't take it too hard. They just need time. I turned to him, asking softly, Are you sure? Because I can already see their prejudice. He squeezed my hand tighter. Esme, I love you. They'll have to accept it, sooner or later. I wanted to believe him. But inside, fine cracks had already formed, signs that the road ahead would not be as smooth as I once thought. 3 days before the wedding, my phone rang near noon. On the other end, Margaret's voice was so sweet it immediately put me on guard. Esme, I think it would be wonderful if you came to the estate for tea this afternoon. Before the big day, I'd like some private time, just the two of us. I hesitated. Her tone was gentle, but I heard the familiar edge beneath it. Still, I didn't want to seem evasive. I answered, Yes, I'll come. That afternoon I drove back. The golden sun stretched across the gravel path, but it didn't bring me warmth. My chest felt heavy like a stone pressing down. A servant opened the door and led me to the sitting room. Contrary to what I expected, there were no tea or pastries, no sense of intimacy. Margaret was already seated in an armchair, dressed in jade-colored silk, before her a dark wooden table. On it lay a thick folder. She smiled. Esme, I'll get straight to the point. A wedding is a serious event. And to keep everything safe for both sides, the Collins family has prepared a prenuptial agreement. I froze. Seeing the dark leather cover and the way she pushed it toward me, I knew this wasn't just routine. I opened it, skimming the first pages. My breath caught. The cold words stretched across. In case of divorce, I would leave with nothing. Any marital property would belong solely to Daniel. Even more shocking was a clause on intellectual property, declaring that all ideas, products, inventions created by Esme during the marriage would be considered Collins family property. I looked up. Do you mean my company, all copyrights, products, could be counted as belonging to the Collins family? Margaret smiled sweetly, her tone like honey. My dear, I only want to ensure there's no ambiguity. Once you join this family, everything should be united, no division. I clenched my hands. In my mind, my mother's voice echoed. Never let anyone take away what you've created, Esme. What you make, you have the right to protect. At that moment, Daniel walked in. He wore a suit, looking rushed as if straight from the office. His eyes showed a flicker of concern when he saw me holding the contract. Mother, she's already seen it? Margaret turned to her son, her smile unchanged. Of course. This is the right time. The wedding is only days away. I hoping Daniel would say something, at least oppose it. But he stayed silent, clearing his throat. Esme, this is family tradition. I think you should consider it. My chest tightened. His silence weighed heavier than any words. I closed the folder, set it down, my voice trembling but controlled. Daniel, do you understand what this means? They want everything I create, even future ideas, to be counted as your family's. Don't you see how unfair that is? He avoided my eyes. I think it's just procedure. My parents have always done this. Margaret interjected, her voice soft as ever. Esme, if you truly love Daniel, then signing a document to secure the future shouldn't be such a burden. I forced my voice to stay calm. I won't sign today. I need time. Margaret's brow twitched slightly, but her smile remained. Of course. But I hope you remember, everything must be settled before the wedding. Our family doesn't like hesitation. I gathered my bag. Daniel called softly after me. Esme, please. Don't be mad. I'll explain later. I turned away without answering. With every step out of that room, my heart grew heavier. The sky outside was clear blue, but my eyes blurred with tears. I hurried to the car, slammed the door shut, my trembling hand resting on the steering wheel. In my mind, the image of Daniel standing there replayed, not the man who knelt on Candlewood Lake to propose, but a son bowing under his mother's control. I broke down in tears. Yet in that very moment, a thought sparked within me. I had lived my whole life to ensure no one could decide my worth but myself. I would not let a stack of papers or a family name strip away what I had built. That night, I returned to the Collins estate with Daniel, but sleep never came. The house was too silent, as if hiding something beneath its polished surface. I told him I needed some air on the balcony. Daniel nodded, told me to rest, and stepped into the hall. I wrapped a thin shawl around me and walked toward the long corridor leading to the library. Near the corner, voices drifted out from a half-open door. Part of me wanted to leave immediately, but my feet froze, heart pounding. Daniel's voice. I know, Veronica. Mother mentioned the prenup months ago. I haven't found a way to tell Esme. Veronica laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Really, Daniel? Do you think she'll sign? She's just a poor professor. Landing you is already luck. If she's smart, she'll sign right away to keep the Collins name. My chest tightened. Every word from Veronica cut like a knife. I heard Daniel sigh. You don't understand, Veronica. Esme isn't like the others. She has pride. If she feels insulted, she won't accept it. So what's your plan? Veronica pressed. To make Mother angry? Daniel, everyone knows you're the weakest of the three brothers. You always avoid conflict. This time won't be any different. He had known all along, yet chose silence, letting his mother play the villain in his place. He hadn't defended me. Not once. I turned away, forcing my breathing to stay even so they wouldn't hear me. My eyes stung, everything blurred. Back in the room, I shut the door gently, collapsed on the bed. The ring on my finger, the symbol of love I once trusted, now felt cold as steel. My phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, my office. Don't worry, I'll have your back. I typed back a single word. Thanks. I didn't sleep all night. Images looped in my mind. Veronica's smirk, Daniel's weary sigh, Margaret's sweet but calculating tone. I realized how utterly alone I was inside this marriage to be. The next morning, I drove straight to Lena's office. She came out to greet me, hugging me tight as if she already knew everything. You look pale, Esme. How was last night? I gave a bitter smile. I heard enough to know I'm not naive anymore. Daniel knew about the prenup. But he ignored it. Lena's eyes flashed with anger on my behalf. I suspected it. This is a trap. Once you sign, they'll control your company, your mind, your work. They don't need you, Esme. They only want what you've built. I dropped my head into my hands, my voice hoarse. But I love him, Lena. Thought he was different. I thought love could bridge the gap between rich and poor. Lena pulled her chair closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. Love him all you want, but don't make yourself a victim. You're not some poor girl lucky to be chosen. You're Esme, an MIT professor, co-founder of an urban renewal company, holding a legacy you built yourself. I lifted my head, and in her eyes I saw my own determination reflected back. Lena went on, listen. They think you've got a bit of education, a modest salary. They have no idea you've got much more. Now is the time to prepare, not just to protect yourself but to teach them a lesson. I swallowed hard, nodding. I won't sign. Good, I'll help you outline a fair agreement for your lawyer to draft. And if Daniel truly loves you, he'll sign it with you. If not. She left the sentence hanging, but I understood. If not, then this love had no meaning. We mapped out key principles and flagged risky clauses for Howard to formalize. Her voice was steady, clear, like the presentations she used to give at MIT. I listened, comforted yet aching. Aching because I realized the love I thought was my safe harbor had hidden a storm. Later that morning, I sat in my small Brooklyn apartment, my laptop glowing with financial spreadsheets. The numbers were clear. $10 million in shares from the green startup I co-founded, plus scattered investments dating back to my MIT years. All meticulously recorded, airtight. I had kept them secret for years, wanting to be loved and seen for myself, not as a walking checkbook. But now, cornered, I knew I had to lay my cards on the table. I dialed Howard Green, my personal lawyer. He had been my father's close friend, quietly helping my mother and me after my father's death. His deep voice answered, Esme, I can tell from your voice something's wrong. I tried to keep steady, but every word caught in my throat. I'm getting married, but 3 days before the wedding, the Collins family gave me an unfair prenup. They want me to forfeit everything, even intellectual property. Silence for a moment. Then his voice hardened. That's not a marriage. That's a sentence. You cannot sign. I let out a dry laugh, my eyes burning. I know. That's why I want to draft a counter-agreement fair to both sides. And I'll disclose my finances. Are you truly ready? He asked slowly. Once you reveal this, there's no going back. I'm ready. If they want to turn marriage into a power game, then at least I'll play on equal ground. Howard scheduled me for the afternoon. His office sat on the 15th floor of an old Manhattan building, shelves stacked high with thick legal volumes. He greeted me with a firm handshake, his blue eyes still sharp though he was past 60. Show me everything you've got. I laid the files on his desk. He examined each financial report, each share certificate, then looked at me with a smile. You've been thorough. $10 million is no small sum. Do you realize many old money families would see you as a threat simply because you created what they inherited? I thought of Veronica's glances, Margaret's barbed questions. Howard began drafting, typing as he explained, We'll protect your intellectual property above all. That's critical because your company could multiply in value within 10 years. We'll also add a clause. Assets before marriage remain separate. Assets gained during marriage are split according to actual contribution. That way no one is shortchanged. I listened, each word soothing my anger. He grew serious. Esme, understand this. The coming confrontation won't be easy. The Collins family won't yield. But if Daniel truly loves you, he'll stand with you. That night, Lena and I sat in my tiny kitchen. She spread the documents across the table, sipping red wine as she tapped each page. Here, this clause, she pointed at the protection of the company. If they have any decency, they'll accept. If not, Esme, it's better to call off the wedding. I gave a bitter smile. You're always blunt. Because I know you too well. You built your life with your own hands. Don't let them treat you like a leech. I held her hand, feeling a steady strength seep into me. Thank you, Lena. Without you, I might have collapsed. No, Esme. You're stronger than you think. The next day I called Daniel. I kept my voice calm. We need to meet. There are things we must be honest about. I didn't tell him everything over the phone. I kept it short. Be ready. Because the rehearsal dinner won't go the way your family imagines. He looked bewildered. Esme, what are you talking about? I answered softly. It's time everyone knows who I really am. The rehearsal dinner was held in a grand ballroom at a grand hotel in New Haven. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light, round tables draped in pure white linens, crystal glasses sparkling under the glow. Guests filled the room, conversations buzzing alongside gentle jazz. I wore a sleek black dress, my hair in a neat bun. Inside my handbag, the files were stacked carefully, the counter-agreement and all my financial documents. Daniel was at my side, tension radiating through every movement. He kept adjusting his collar, glancing around as if waiting for a storm. He must have sensed it coming. As the main course was served, Margaret rose. The chatter faded, every eye turning toward her. With pride in her posture, she placed a thick folder on the long table in the center of the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we raise our glasses to the happy couple, there's a small matter I must address." Her words struck the room like lightning. Margaret opened the folder, her voice sharp and clear. "This is the prenuptial agreement between the Collins family and Esme. A necessary step to protect our assets and traditions. I believe if Esme truly loves Daniel, signing here and now should pose no difficulty." A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Some guests covered their mouths, others tilted their phones to record secretly. Across from me, Veronica sat with folded arms, a satisfied smile curling her lips. Daniel tried to intervene. "Mother, this isn't the time. It's the perfect time." Margaret cut him off, eyes cold. "We have nothing to hide." I drew in a long breath. This was the moment I had prepared for. Slowly I opened my bag and pulled out my own folder. The rustle of paper echoed in the hush. I set it beside Margaret's contract, then brought out another. My financial records. "Thank you, Mrs. Collins, for the opportunity. In fact, I also brought a few documents tonight." I turned the first page toward the crowd. "This is the counter-agreement, fair to both parties. And this is proof that I hold $10 million in equity in an urban renewal company. I enter this marriage as an equal. No one has the right to treat me as someone clinging for support. And if anyone wants to test me with money, I invite you to look at this number." The whispers rose, then fell into stunned silence. Veronica's jaw dropped, her face drained of color. Margaret went rigid, eyes wide with shock. Daniel sat still as though the air had been knocked out of him. I continued, "This wedding will not happen unless I am respected." Guests stirred, some filming, a few gasps of "oh my God" rippling across the hall. The tension was thick enough to cut. Margaret forced out words. What are you saying? This is only." I cut her off, for the first time since I'd known her. "This is not only. This is my dignity. I've held my tongue too long, letting you believe whatever you wanted. But tonight, before everyone, I make it clear. I am not here to beg or to lean on your family. I am here because I love Daniel and I want a marriage built on equality." Veronica gave a weak laugh, trying to sneer. "Equality? From a professor. A professor. An entrepreneur. A woman who built her own career. Call me whatever you like, but never forget, I have never needed the Collins family to survive." Veronica's smirk vanished, her eyes blazing with fury. Daniel started toward me, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Tonight, I need to know whose side you're on." He opened his mouth, then shut it tight. The room waited, all eyes on us. In that instant I realized, love alone is not enough if it lacks courage. I turned to the crowd, bowing slightly. "I believe that's enough for tonight." Then I gathered my papers, slipped them back into my bag and left the ballroom in stunned silence. No one spoke. The echo of my heels on marble pounded through the heavy stillness as I stepped out of that glittering hall. I left that night both lighter and more bitter. Behind me, whispers carried on, but I didn't turn back. The doors closed, leaving the crystal-bright room and its stunned faces behind. That night I stayed at a hotel near the central station. 4 hours I sat by the window watching traffic crawl under New Haven's streetlights. The emerald ring lay on the table, shining yet unbearably heavy. I had taken it off as soon as I returned, a red mark pressed into my finger. Near midnight my phone rang. Daniel's name lit up. I hesitated, then answered. "Esme, please don't hang up." His voice was hoarse. "I have to see you." I paused, then replied, "Tomorrow morning at the cafe near the square." The next morning was chilly. I arrived early, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a hot cup of coffee. Daniel walked in, looking exhausted, hair disheveled, suit rumpled as if he hadn't slept. "Esme, I'm sorry. Everything last night. I should have stopped Mother earlier. But you didn't. You knew about the prenup for months, yet let them turn it into a trap in front of every guest." He lowered his head, hands clasped tight. "I was afraid to confront my mother. I was weak. But I love you, Esme. Please don't leave me. Give me another chance." The man sitting before me was the one who once made me believe love could bridge any divide. But last night, when I needed him most, his voice was absent. I pulled the ring from my bag and set it gently on the table. Daniel, I love you too. But love cannot survive without courage and fairness. I need a partner who stands up, not one who waits for others to do it. He froze, eyes red. Esme, I shook my head, my voice breaking. I'm calling off the wedding. I'm returning the ring. From here on, I'll walk my own path. I leaving him there with trembling hands clutching the family heirloom. 2 days later, news of the upset at the rehearsal dinner spread across tabloids and society pages alike. Clips secretly filmed by guests went viral. Me standing calmly, revealing my financial documents, declaring equality before leaving the party. Headlines screamed, "Bride refuses to sign prenup, stuns the Collins family. University professor turns out to be startup millionaire." High society buzzed, while the Collins family became the subject of ridicule. Margaret and Veronica were condemned for their arrogance, called a slap in the face to old money pride. I returned to New York and poured myself into work. The unexpected story drew mainstream media to my startup. Several outlets wrote extensively about our mission of reclaiming green spaces, about the community projects we had already built. A week later, we received an offer from a major investment fund. The meeting took place in a glass-walled boardroom in Midtown Manhattan. The head of the fund, a woman who had succeeded in sustainable real estate, looked at me with admiration. "Esme, we've followed your story. But what convinced us wasn't the headlines, it was your financials and real projects. Your company deserves capital to expand nationwide." I shook her hand, emotions rising. After years of working quietly, my efforts were finally recognized, not for a title but for true value. That evening, back at my apartment, I opened the window. The New York night wind rushed in with honking horns and neon lights. I breathed deeply, feeling a freedom I had never known. No more Collins' name. No more scrutinizing eyes. Only me and the wide road of my own future ahead. 6 months after the night I walked out of the Collins ballroom, I stepped onto the stage at a TEDx conference in New York. Bright lights beamed down, the auditorium hushed, hundreds of eyes fixed on me. I wore a simple cream-colored dress, my hair falling loosely, holding nothing but a small microphone. I began slowly. I once thought marriage was the union of two hearts. But then I realized sometimes people try to turn it into a contract of power and control. 3 days before my wedding, I was asked to sign an agreement that would take away everything I had built for years. A ripple of whispers passed through the room. I gave a faint smile, letting my words settle. That night, I understood that true love cannot exist without courage and fairness. And most of all, I learned one thing: no one has the right to define your worth for you. I spoke about my childhood in my mother's small bookstore, the scholarship years at MIT, the green startup that began from a sketch on scrap paper. I told them about the rehearsal dinner, where I stood before hundreds of people, opened my financial records, and proved that I wasn't a lucky choice, but a woman who had earned her place as an equal. The audience's eyes lit up with every word. An older man in the front row nodded gently, as if finding himself in my story. A group of young women in the corner had their phones ready, eyes shining. I ended with a voice both steady and warm. "If there's one message I want to leave with you today, it's this: protect your own value. You may lose a relationship, you may lose an opportunity that once seemed perfect, but you will keep the most important thing: your dignity and the right to live as who you truly are." The hall erupted in applause. I took a deep breath, feeling recognition no longer tied to the proud Collins name, but to people who genuinely understood me. When the talk ended, I stepped off the stage. Lena was waiting in the hallway, her eyes shining. "You did it, Esme." I hugged her, smiling softly. "No, we did it." That afternoon, I chose to walk alone through Central Park. The late sunlight filtered through the trees, casting golden streaks across the gravel paths. Children laughed by the pond, while a few elderly people sat calmly on benches reading newspapers. I walked slowly, letting the spring breeze brush against my cheeks. Everything around me was simple, yet inside I felt a profound peace. I tilted my face upward, letting the sunset fall across it. In that moment, I needed no applause, no validation. Freedom, dignity, and quiet pride were the greatest rewards I could have asked for. And I knew the road ahead was long, but I was ready to take it, one steady step at a time, each step my own. You know, as I walked under the evening sun that day, only one thought echoed inside me. Sometimes to hold on to true happiness, you must have the courage to let go of what isn't fair to you. I chose to stand up, to never let anyone else define my worth. And because of that, I found freedom. What about you? If you were in my place, looked down upon by a wealthy family that tried to control everything, would you stay silent and sign, or would you stand up for yourself? I truly want to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, please hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories about family, love, and courage in life. Every story here is a journey, and maybe you'll find a part of yourself within it.